Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel Easy Way to Learn. I am Shalja Tripathi and today's lecture include mechanism of inhalation and exhalation. Basically this mechanism requires the movement of rib cage and diaphragm. Rib cage is a bony structure which encloses two main organs of our body, that is heart and lungs. We'll be dealing here with lungs. Another is diaphragm, which is a muscular sheath, and that also helps in the movement of air in and out of the body. So let's see how it works. So this table will help you understand the mechanism. See, there are intercostal muscles. These are the muscles that are present between the ribs. So if this is our rib, or I'll draw it here. See, these are ribs, and between the ribs are the muscles which are called intercostal muscles, which help in the movement of rib cage. So during inhalation or taking in of air, these intercostal muscles will contract, thus pulling the rib cage upward and outward. So you can feel it. You inhale deeply. So what do you feel? The chest is moving upward or outward. Okay. Then diaphragm, which is a muscular sheath present between thoracic and abdominal cavity. So our body is divided by this muscular sheath which is present, and above this is thoracic or chest cavity, where two organs are present, heart and lungs, and below is abdominal cavity. So this muscular sheath, which is called diaphragm, divides our body into chest cavity or thoracic cavity and abdominal cavity. So this muscular sheath will also show movement. So diaphragm contracts and flattens. So if our rib cage is moving upward and diaphragm is moving downward, so what is happening to this space? The space is increasing, or the volume increases. So volume of the chest cavity increases and the pressure will decrease. Correspondingly, pressure decreases. So the atmospheric air is sucked into the lungs. So this is the coordinated action of our rib cage and diaphragm. During exhalation, when the air is pushed out, these intercostal muscles present between the ribs will relax, thus moving the rib cage downward and inward. Simultaneously, diaphragm will relax and move upward. So what is happening? Rib cage is moving inward and downward, and diaphragm is moving upward. So the space is decreased, that is, volume will decrease, and if volume decreases, pressure on the lungs will increase, thus pushing out air from the lungs. So you must always remember that pressure and volume are inversely related. This is an important piece of information that will help you remember these points. See, volume increases, then pressure decreases. That is, volume and pressure are inversely related. Okay. So this is the whole mechanism of inhalation and exhalation. So lungs will automatically not take in air and expel out carbon dioxide on its own. It is the movement of rib cage and diaphragm that is providing pressure or putting pressure on the lungs or decreasing the pressure on the lungs for movement of air. Okay. So now we'll see what is residual volume of air. See, during breathing cycle, when air is let in and let out, some amount of air is always left in the lungs, and this is called residual volume of air. Why it is necessary, or what is the importance of this residual volume of air? See, the process of exchange of gases in our lungs is taking place through diffusion, which is a very slow process. So there need to be sufficient time for exchange of gases. So this air or the residual volume should always be present in the lungs. So you may write down during breathing cycle, when air is let in and let out, lungs always contain residual volume of air. So during breathing cycle, when air is let in and let out, lungs always contain, or you may write, some amount of air, and this is called residual volume of air. So why it is needed? So that there is sufficient time for exchange of gases. It is necessary so that there is sufficient time for exchange of gases by diffusion it is a very slow process. Since diffusion is very slow process. Okay. So the next important point that we must take, is diffusion sufficient for terrestrial organisms or the organisms which have large body? So next we'll deal with this part of the question. Is diffusion sufficient for the terrestrial organisms or animals having large body? So you may write down the question first. Is the process of diffusion sufficient for animals with large body? Okay, so in this question, animals means not only terrestrial but also aquatic. Okay, so answer will be that diffusion, since it is a very slow process, it's not sufficient for transporting oxygen to every part of the body. So there is need for something more which can fasten the process. So presence of respiratory pigments like hemoglobin in human body helps in transportation. So let's see the answer. So our body contains pigment called hemoglobin. See, these respiratory pigments, just like hemoglobin, which is present in our blood, in the RBCs, see, this is the respiratory pigment that is present in the RBC of our body. Red blood cells that are present in the bloodstream. See, this word is made up of two words. Heme means iron and globin means protein. So one RBC can have millions of these molecules. So one RBC molecule will have millions of hemoglobin. This is short form for hemoglobin. And one molecule of hemoglobin can bind with 4 molecules of oxygen. And one molecule of hemoglobin can carry 4 molecules of oxygen. So this is the efficiency of a respiratory pigment, that is hemoglobin, and it also gives red color to our blood. So this is a respiratory pigment present in our blood. So oxygen is very efficiently transported throughout the body in lesser time. And what about exhalation of CO2? So we know that CO2 is more soluble in water. So it is basically transported by the plasma of the blood in dissolved form. So oxygen is transported with the help of hemoglobin. Though carbon dioxide can also be transported, but hemoglobin has more affinity for oxygen. Affinity means more liking for oxygen, or we can say in reverse way, oxygen has greater affinity for hemoglobin as compared to carbon dioxide. So oxygen is basically transported through hemoglobin in a combined form, and carbon dioxide is basically transported in dissolved form in plasma. So you may write down the answer. See, when the body of animal is large, diffusion process is not sufficient. Diffusion pressure alone is not sufficient. See, when body size of animal is large, diffusion pressure you underline this word, diffusion pressure alone is not sufficient to deliver oxygen. To all parts of the body. Instead, respiratory pigment called hemoglobin in humans. Instead, respiratory pigment called hemoglobin in humans helps in transportation of oxygen from the lungs to the tissues. See, it has high affinity for oxygen. The hemoglobin has high affinity for O2. Then carbon dioxide. Affinity means more liking. So hemoglobin, if there is an option between oxygen and carbon dioxide, so hemoglobin will obviously combine with oxygen. See, carbon dioxide, CO2, is transported in soluble form, is transported in soluble form since it dissolves in the plasma of the blood. The plasma is the fluid part of the blood. So oxygen is carried by the cellular part, that is RBC is carrying oxygen mainly, and Carbon dioxide is mainly transported in dissolved form through plasma. Okay, this finishes our this lecture. Hope you understood the lecture well. Please like, share and subscribe and enable the notification bell. Thank you so much.